Greetings, dear friends! Present to your attention the most common malfunctions and breakdowns that occur on the Toyota Land Cruiser Prado 150. The 6-cylinder V-shaped petrol engine 1GR-FE of 4 liters is the flagship in the lineup. After installing and equipping with the dual VVT-I system, it offers the owner to harness the power of 282 HP. Before modernization, its prototype produced only 249 HP. There is no need to blame the powerful engine for serious problems. With careful maintenance, timely maintenance, he will be able to overcome the mark of 400,000 kilometers, stumbling only once about replacing the chain in the interval between 250 and 300 TkM. If the flagship unit can be seriously accused of anything, it is gluttony. Fortunately, this is more than pays off with minimal repair costs. At the same time, if the devices show a consumption on the highway of 10 I per 100 kilometers, it is reality this is all, 13. The same is the case with the city. To eat 25 liters per 100 in this mode for him to sleep once and no blush. Plus, the engine's grid for fuel complements the high vehicle tax. In general, the motor is good, but with all this, you still need to decide on it. 2TR-FE is a small 4-cylinder petrol engine. Against the background of 1GR-FE, it does not seem serious, offering only 163 HP. Yes, it is less expensive in terms of fuel, but it turned out to be rather weak for such a large SUV. As a result, it is often necessary to squeeze out to the maximum from it, which could not but affect the resource. The approximate life of the new 2TR-FE with a careful attitude is about 400,000 kilometers. Then, with aggressive operation, this mileage may drop to 250 to 300,000. In terms of hardware, the unit is also quite problem-free. If something causes trouble for the owner, it is injectors that are sensitive to fuel quality and attachments, among which the starter and generator, or rather their bearings, turn out to be the weakest. The 3-liter turbo diesel 1 kd FTV 173 HP is also not amiss. The already mentioned 400,000 kilometers is quite within his shoulder, and at the same time, fuel consumption will not cause a nervous tick. The cost of diesel fuel will be offset by the frequency of problems. Diesel will take over during repairs, especially if you start the most expensive thing, the fuel system. That's the high-pressure fuel pump, that the injectors had low-quality fuel, and by 120 TkM, at least one of the above is capable of malfunctioning with subsequent heavy financial losses. First year 1 kd FTV motors suffer from piston cracking due to the high brittleness of the metal. The resource of such an engine sometimes did not reach up to 100,000 kilometers. In 2013, through the next revision of the pistons, the problem practically disappeared, and only a few of the cases of breakdowns on early runs were felt. The turbine also cannot be called a strong side. The limit of its resource ranges from 200 to 250,000 kilometers. As expected, the EGR valve, clogged with soot, was also the vulnerable part. Every 50 to 60 TkM, the intercooler should be cleaned together with the intake manifold. To avoid problems, the owners are flashing to the engine ECU to work without EGR. Cheap tuning here only benefits the resource. The quiet 2.8-liter diesel with the 1 GD FTV marking has been available for Prado various technologies to protect the environment. Despite its lower displacement compared to the noisier 1 kd FTV, its torque is up 25% to deliver 177 bhp. However, the resource of 1 GD FTV is almost 2 times less compared to other models, about 250,000 kilometers. The weak point of the diesel engine obsessed with ecology is again the injectors, Delphi. Due to the increased sensitivity to fuel quality, they may refuse to work after 100 to 120,000. With the cooling system on one or another engine, everything was expected Reference pumps are leaking and Prado's illness did not pass by. Antifreeze snot can be seen not only at the pump connectors but also at the joints of the pipes to the radiator. An SUV's drivetrain is one of its strengths and rarely poses a problem. With timely and proper maintenance, automatic machines from Asian A761F, A960F and A750F do not make themselves felt in a negative way. It is only important to prevent overheating and change the oil every 50 to 75,000 kilometers. The 4-speed A340, A343F gearbox, which was supplied only to the early versions of the low-power 2.7-liter gasoline engine, also has no questions about resource and unpretentiousness. What can we say about a simple 5-speed mechanics? Change the clutch every 200 TkM and pull the handle further. Cases of failure of the handheld actuator are not among the most widespread diseases. This happens if you often use the Prado 150 for its direct off-road purpose with the active use of the sensor differential lock. Roughly the same can be said about the universal joint shafts. In general terms, the suspension of an SUV was created for Russia. All replacements and resources fit into the proposed timeline, but there are no nuisances worth discussing. For example, the sore spot of almost all Toyota in the form of a knock in the steering column has not gone anywhere and is piercing Prado 150 owners when driving over bumps to this day. The appearance of extraneous noise is caused by the total backlash in the connection of the lower shaft with the bearing and spline connection. The problem is additionally fundamentally solved either by replacing the entire assembly or by collective farm modifications with the installation of a retaining ring. It is not worth sinning on the steering rods and tips when the first knocks appear, at least until the mileage has passed 150,000 kilometers. A frequent occurrence for the Prado is the tilt of the body to the right. In the service, the springs in the front are usually swept. There is even an official bulletin about this, but sometimes the roll is created by the KDSS system, active type anti-roll bars. This phenomenon is eliminated either by adjusting the pressure or by replacing the hydraulic cylinders. In order not to spend 50,000 rubles apiece, some owners threw out the skittish system and put the usual stabilizers, although it is better and easier to periodically change the fluid in the circuit. When buying a used TLC Prado 150 with rear air suspension, you will have to take into account that the system is sensitive to critical overloads. It happens that the cylinders break, and the repair of only one pillow can cost a couple of tens, 1,000 rubles. During intensive operation with maximum loads, more often off-road conditions in combination with an aggressive driving style, the compressor also often fails. The elementary signs of these problems are cutting rise to a height or an unauthorized decrease in ground clearance during continuing parking with the engine off. In order not to take risks in this regard, when buying a used Prado 150 you will have to check the operation of the system as it should. Otherwise, neither the suspension nor the steering is puzzling to the owners. Levers and shock absorbers quietly pass 150 to 200 TkM if you do not abuse the overcoming of the relief at inadequate speeds. Even the stabilizer bushings hold 120 to 140 TkM. The greater the mass of the car, the more difficult it is to stop. But Japanese engineers do not think so. There are quite a few reproaches towards the brakes of an SUV, and in all aspects from insufficient efficiency to premature wear of brake pads and discs, where the former leave 15 km each, the latter 50 to 70 km each. In terms of design and functionality, the salon does not stand out against the background of other Japanese. Everything is standard and comfortable. However, there are complaints about the finish. Plastic is sensitive to mechanical stress. After a couple of months, it looks stretched and worn, which is striking, especially in bright sun. Typical Prado 150 saw is the weak handles of the climate control unit. You should be especially careful with the right twist, the passenger area. Inside it is hollow, and the stopper is weak, and when pressed firmly, the button is easily cracked. You cannot buy handles separately, only the entire unit is assembled. Fortunately, if you have time and desire, you can fix it yourself by disassembling the block and putting the broken off cylinder in its place with glue. If we talk about seats and steering wheel, the equipment is important here. After more than 100 TKM of run, only premium leather will look beautiful, and so the upholstery of the seats, steering wheel, as well as silver plastic inserts on the steering wheel and the handle of the box, after 30,000 kilometers noticeably wear out. This will inevitably be misleading when assessing the mileage by indirect indications, and after all, until the second restyling of 2017, the mileage in any of the ECU blocks is not duplicated. In terms of electrics and electronics, Prado is typical native of the land of the rising sun. That is, there are almost no problems. Nothing breaks or burns without malicious intent. However, with long-term operation, and there is a hole in the world woman. There are known cases of replacing the steering column cable with the accompaniment of the failure of the buttons on the steering wheel and the highlighting of errors in the SRS unit. The price of the original cable is from 18,000 rubles. The Chinese analog will cost 10 to 12 times cheaper. Squeaks in a Toyota cabin are a common thing. Music in the cabin is usually created by explosive plastic on the center console or on the bottom right of the windscreen. To drive it away, you need to glue the plastic lining from the outside. You won't have to worry about the body and frame of the Prado 150. The only thing that can spoil the impression is corrosion, which only the frame looks quite common and leads to nothing. And being on the hood it already causes justified indignation. Any small chips force the metal to bleed, which is why dealers have to clear up the warranty misunderstanding. The paintwork, of course, is weak and easily stretched, which is especially noticeable on black cars and by 100 TKM without restorative polishing. The Prado looks 200, shuffled with slightly dimmed headlights. On this, information about the problems of the Toyota Land Cruiser Prado 150 is exhausted. If you know more or do not agree with what you heard, I'm waiting for you in the comments.